I'm Talia, 32, a software engineer in Boston. Despite my success, my relationship with my parents has always been complicated. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the one who always helped financially. Recently, I contributed $9,000 to help with home repairs, a significant amount from my savings. Then last week, my father dropped a bomb. "You're not invited to Thanksgiving," he said casually. "Then don't expect my $9,000, I replied, while fighting back tears. Before I tell you how I stood up to my manipulative family, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to establish boundaries with difficult family members. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Michigan, where appearances mattered more than reality. Our family looked perfect from the outside, but inside our home, the dynamics were far from healthy. My father, Richard, ruled our household with an iron fist. He controlled every decision, especially financial ones, and maintained an emotional distance that made him seem more like a stern landlord than a loving parent. His word was law, and questioning him would result in days of cold silence or explosive anger. My mother, Grace, chose the path of least resistance. She avoided conflict at all costs, which meant she enabled my father's controlling behavior. Whenever tensions rose, she would urge us kids to just do what Dad wanted. Her constant refrain was, "Why can't you just make him happy? It's easier for everyone." This passive approach meant she never stood up for us when we needed an advocate. My younger brother Jackson was the golden child from day one. He shared my father's interest in sports and traditional male activities, which automatically earned him special treatment. Despite being chronically irresponsible with money, his financial mistakes were always forgiven. When he dropped out of community college to pursue a series of failed business ventures, my parents continued supporting him without question. My sister Amanda, the baby of the family, learned early that tears and tantrums got her whatever she wanted. As the youngest, she was spoiled beyond reason, and quickly figured out that siding with my father against me earned her extra privileges. She became his faithful echo, reinforcing his opinions and judgments, especially when they were directed at me. Then there was me stuck in the middle. Somehow I became designated as the responsible one, the family fixer, the emotional support, and eventually the financial safety net. From an early age, I showed aptitude in mathematics and science, subjects my father dismissed as not practical enough for a girl. When I expressed interest in computer science, he laughed and suggested I focus on teaching or nursing instead. I'll never forget his exact words. "Girls don't have the logical thinking needed for programming. You'll waste your time and our money." Despite his discouragement, I applied for scholarships behind his back and was accepted into a computer science program at a prestigious university. When the acceptance letter arrived, my father's reaction wasn't pride, but anger at my defiance. He refused to contribute a single dollar toward my education. During college, I worked multiple jobs while maintaining a full course load. I waited tables on weekends, tutored younger students on weekday evenings, and took overnight shifts at a 24-hour computer lab. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford, but I was determined to prove my father wrong. The irony of our family dynamic became apparent during my sophomore year, when my parents faced an unexpected tax bill. Despite his earlier refusal to support my education, my father called to ask if I could spare any money to help them out. I had exactly $3,000 in my savings account money. I had earmarked for an important coding boot camp that summer. I sent them $2,000. This established a pattern that would repeat throughout the next decade. My family would criticize my choices, dismiss my achievements, and then ask for financial assistance whenever they needed it. After graduation, I secured a position at a leading tech company in Boston. My starting salary was more than my father had ever earned, a fact he resented deeply. As my career flourished, the requests from home grew more frequent. Jackson needed bail money after a DUI. Amanda wanted help with her wedding expenses. My parents' car broke down and needed repairs they couldn't afford. Each time I would transfer the money, hoping that my generosity might finally earn their respect and approval. Family gatherings became exercises in emotional endurance. I would fly home for holidays, bringing expensive gifts, and contributing significantly to meal preparations, only to be criticized for my appearance, my marital status, and my life choices. "Why are you still single? When are you going to find a real job with stability? Programming is just a trend, you know? These comments would come from my father while he used the new iPad I had bought him. My mother would nod along occasionally, interjecting with, "We just worry about you, sweetheart." And all the while, I was helping them maintain their lifestyle while sacrificing my own financial goals. My friends in Boston couldn't understand why I continued to subject myself to this treatment. "You're successful, independent, and don't need their approval," my roommate Jenna would say. But family ties are complicated, and breaking them requires a courage I hadn't yet found. By the time I turned 30, I had helped my family with nearly $40,000 in financial assistance. I had delayed buying my own home to ensure they kept theirs. I had postponed trips I wanted to take so Amanda could have her dream honeymoon. I had invested in Jackson's third attempt at starting a business instead of investing in my own retirement account. And still, I was the outsider at family gatherings tolerated, rather than welcomed, valued for my checkbook rather than my presence. The most recent family crisis hit during a severe storm last September. My parents called in panic after their roof partially collapsed during a particularly violent thunderstorm. Water damage was spreading through the upper floor of their home, and they needed immediate help. I want to be clear about something. I've always had a soft spot for genuine emergencies. Despite our complicated relationship, I couldn't bear the thought of my parents without a secure roof over their heads. When they explained that their insurance would only cover 60% of the repair costs due to some fine print about the age of the roof, I felt that familiar tug of responsibility. The roof repair estimate came to $15,000. With insurance covering 60%, they needed $6,000 out of pocket. But then there was water damage to furniture, electronics, and my mother's craft room. And of course, there would be unexpected expenses that always emerge during home repairs. "We need your help, Talia," my father said during a tense family video call. "Everyone's contributing what they can." I looked at the faces on my screen. Jackson was driving a new truck he'd purchased just a month earlier. Amanda was calling from her recently renovated kitchen that had cost at least $30,000, according to her Instagram posts. My parents were sitting in their living room with the 70-inch smart TV I'd bought them last Christmas visible in the background. "How much are Jackson and Amanda contributing?" I asked. My father's expression hardened. "Your brother has his truck payments, and your sister just put a lot of money into her house. They're giving what they can. We're asking you because you have the most flexible income." Flexible income. That's what they called my hard-earned money that I carefully budgeted and invested. After some back and forth, I learned that Jackson was contributing $500 and Amanda $1,000. My parents were expecting me to cover the rest. I took a deep breath and opened my banking app. I had been saving for a down payment on a condo in Boston, where real estate prices were astronomical. My savings account had just passed the $50,000 mark after years of careful budgeting. The amount they needed would set me back significantly. "I'll send $9,000, I finally said. "That should cover the remaining repair costs and give you a buffer for unexpected expenses." The relief on my parents' faces was immediate, but neither of them actually said thank you. Instead, my father nodded as if I had simply fulfilled an obligation. "We knew we could count on you, Talia," he said. "You've always been good with money." The transfer went through that evening, $9,000 gone in an instant. I told myself it was worth it to ensure my parents had a safe home, but a voice in the back of my mind wondered if I had once again been manipulated. In the weeks following the money transfer, I noticed a subtle shift in our communications. My weekly calls with my mother became shorter, with her finding excuses to hang up. My father, who rarely initiated contact anyway, became even more distant. When I did manage to have a conversation with them, the gratitude I might have expected was notably absent. Instead, during one video call, my father actually criticized my apartment. "You're paying too much for that tiny place in the city," he commented, peering at my background. "With what you earn, you should have a house by now." I bit my tongue to avoid responding that I would have been much closer to owning a home if I hadn't just sent them $9,000. My mother chimed in with her own subtle dig. "Honey, you look tired. Are you taking care of yourself? Those bags under your eyes age you." These small insults continued in every interaction. My brother Jackson called to thank me for helping our parents, but managed to slip in a request for a loan to cover his truck insurance. When I hesitated, he responded with, "Come on, sis. We all know you've got the cash." What's family for Amanda was perhaps the most transparent. She sent me a text message with a link to a luxury handbag, writing my birthday's coming up next month. Just giving you some ideas since you're so generous these days. The resentment I had been suppressing for years began to surface. During a session with my therapist, Dr. Lisa, I finally broke down. I feel used, I admitted through tears. I've given so much financially and emotionally, and I get nothing back except criticism and more demands. Dr. Lisa's response was gentle but firm. From what you've described, Talia, your family has created a dynamic where you're valued for what you provide, not who you are. That's not a healthy relationship. Is it wrong to want to help my family? I asked. Helping family isn't wrong, she explained. But there's a difference between genuine help and enabling harmful patterns. You're not responsible for your family's financial well-being at the expense of your own. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself dreading the holiday. In previous years, I had flown back to Michigan, stayed in my childhood bedroom, and endured days of subtle and not so subtle criticism, while contributing significantly to the meal preparations and expenses. This year, I had tentatively suggested hosting Thanksgiving at my place in Boston. I had recently upgraded to a two-bedroom apartment specifically so I could have family visit. But my suggestion was immediately shot down. "We always have Thanksgiving at home," my mother insisted. "It's tradition." I knew better than to argue, so I booked my flight for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and requested time off work. I even ordered a gourmet pie from a famous Boston bakery to bring with me, hoping it might earn me some small measure of appreciation. Little did I know that this Thanksgiving would be different in ways I never could have anticipated. The call came on a Tuesday evening, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was working late finishing a coding project with a looming deadline when my father's name appeared on my phone screen. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided to answer thinking it might be about travel arrangements for the holiday. "Hey, Dad," I said, adjusting my headphones while continuing to type. "What's up?" His voice came through with that familiar authoritative tone. "Just checking in." How's the weather up there in Boston? Small talk wasn't my father's style, so I immediately felt suspicious. We exchanged a few sentences about the weather and my work before he cleared his throat in that way he does when he's about to say something unpleasant. "So about Thanksgiving," he began. "We've been thinking, and it might be better if you don't come this year." I stopped typing. The words hung in the air between us, momentarily incomprehensible. "What do you mean?" I finally managed. "You're not invited to Thanksgiving," he said casually, as if telling me we were having turkey instead of ham. "The house is going to be pretty full. Jackson's bringing his new girlfriend, and she's got 2 kids. Amanda and her husband are coming, of course. There's just not enough space." My mind raced through the layout of my parents' 4-bedroom house, the same house where we had hosted extended family gatherings of up to 20 people in the past. "That doesn't make sense," I said slowly. "You have plenty of room." He sighed, that familiar sound of impatience. "Look, to be honest, things are a bit tense right now. Last time you were here, you questioned my financial decisions in front of everyone. It made for an uncomfortable atmosphere." I struggled to recall what he was referring to, then remembered a brief conversation about their new boat purchase, despite claiming financial hardship. I had simply asked how they could afford it after needing help with the roof repairs, so I'm being punished for asking a reasonable question. I asked, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. "Nobody's punishing you," he replied dismissively. "We just think it would be more comfortable for everyone this way. You can come for Christmas instead." Something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed frustration and hurt crashed through the dam I had carefully constructed. Before I could think better of it, the words tumbled out. "Then don't expect my $9,000, I replied, while still staring at my computer screen in disbelief. The silence that followed was deafening. When my father finally spoke, his voice had taken on the dangerous, quiet tone that had frightened me as a child. "Is that a threat?" he asked. "Are you really putting conditions on helping your family?" "I'm not putting conditions on anything," I responded, finding strength in my anger. "I'm pointing out the hypocrisy of taking my money while excluding me from family gatherings. That money was to help with essential repairs, not to fund a Thanksgiving I'm not welcome to attend. That's very selfish of you, Talia, he said. Very selfish indeed. I thought we raised you better than that. The call ended shortly after, with my father's final words being, "Think about what kind of daughter you want to be." I sat in my darkened apartment, staring at the blank screen of my phone, shock gradually giving way to a deep, aching hurt. Within minutes, my mother was calling. I answered, already knowing what to expect. "Oh, Talia," she began, her voice trembling with carefully cultivated tears. "Your father is very upset. I don't think you understand the pressure he's under." "What about the pressure I'm under?" I asked. "I just gave you $9,000 and now I'm told I'm not welcome for Thanksgiving. How do you think that makes me feel?" "You know how your father is," she replied, evading the question. "He doesn't express himself well sometimes. Of course we want you here, but maybe it would be better to let things cool down first." I recognized the pattern. My mother was doing what she always did, running interference for my father without ever holding him accountable. It was easier to ask me to accommodate his unreasonable behavior than to expect him to change. Before I could respond further, my phone buzzed with incoming text messages. My brother Jackson had already been informed of our conversation. "Way to be dramatic, sis," his text read. "Dad's pretty pissed. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" Minutes later, my sister Amanda made a vague but pointed social media post. "Some people just can't stand not being the center of attention. Family holidays are stressful enough without the drama." I turned off my phone and finally allowed myself to break down. The tears came in waves, accompanied by that horrible feeling of rejection that had been my companion since childhood. Despite all I had given, all I had sacrificed, I was still the outsider, still unworthy of inclusion in my own family. My roommate Jenna found me an hour later, still sitting in darkness. She listened as I poured out the whole story, her expression shifting from concern to outrage. "That's emotional extortion, Talia," she said firmly. "They take your money but exclude you from family events. That's not okay by any standard." My friend Marcus called later that evening after Jenna had contacted him, concerned about my state. As a therapist himself, he offered perspective I desperately needed. "What would you tell a friend in this situation?" he asked gently. "I'd tell them they're being used," I admitted. "I'd tell them to stop enabling toxic behavior." "Then why is it different when it's you?" he pressed. "Because they're my family," I whispered. "I'm supposed to help family. Family doesn't treat each other like ATMs," he said. "Love doesn't come with a price tag." As the night progressed, my hurt began to transform into something else. Resolve, determination. For the first time, I decided not to back down, not to accept the role of family doormat. I would stand my ground, even if it meant spending Thanksgiving alone. Little did I know this decision would unveil truths about my family that would change our relationship forever. The morning after my father's shocking phone call, I woke up with puffy eyes and a strange sense of clarity. I had spent years trying to buy my family's love and respect, and it clearly wasn't working. Something had to change, but first, I needed more information about what was really happening at home. I opened Instagram and began scrolling through my family members' recent posts, something I usually avoided to protect my mental health. What I discovered left me breathless with anger. My mother had posted photos of elaborate Thanksgiving decorations she had purchased, including an expensive harvest-themed table runner, artisanal candles, and hand-painted place settings. The caption read, "Preparing for our best Thanksgiving ever. So excited to create beautiful memories with the family." The family that apparently didn't include me. Jackson had shared a story about a special bottle of bourbon he had purchased for the holiday. 30-year-old small batch Kentucky bourbon isn't cheap, I knew that much. His caption mentioned bringing it to impress Dad and his boss, who was apparently joining them for dessert. His boss. They were having his boss over but couldn't make room for me. Amanda's posts were perhaps the most revealing. She had shared multiple photos of food preparations, including ingredients for gourmet side dishes, and an organic free-range turkey that cost 3 times what a regular one would. "Upgrading our Thanksgiving game this year," she had written. "Beyond excited to host Tom's parents for the first time in our renovated dining room." Wait, hosting. At my parents' house. and Tom's parents were coming too. The pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't about space constraints at all. They were planning an elaborate Thanksgiving gathering, probably the most expensive one they'd ever had, and they had deliberately excluded me. A terrible suspicion formed in my mind. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and looked at my recent transactions. The $9,000 transfer to my parents had gone through exactly 3 weeks ago, shortly after my mother had begun posting about Thanksgiving plans. Was it possible they were using my roof repair money to fund their extravagant holiday? I needed evidence, not just suspicion. I remembered that my parents had added me to their family email account years ago for sending photos and coordinating visits. I rarely checked it, preferring to communicate by phone, but it might contain information. Logging in, I found a folder labeled Home Repairs. Inside were correspondence with their insurance company, the roofing contractor, and several other service providers. I scanned the emails quickly, my heart pounding. The insurance company had initially offered to cover 60% of the damages, as my parents had told me. However, after an appeal and a visit from a senior claims adjuster, they had revised their assessment. The final email from the insurance company, dated 2 days after I had sent the money, confirmed they would cover 95% of all repair costs, including water damage to the interior. In essence, my parents needed less than $1,000 out of pocket, not the $9,000 I had provided. Further emails revealed something even more disturbing. My father had been consulting with a financial advisor about early retirement options. One email mentioned receiving a considerable sum that would accelerate his retirement timeline. The date matched my transfer exactly. I felt physically ill. My father had misled me about the severity of the damages, the insurance coverage, and his true financial needs. He had taken advantage of my concern for their well-being to extract money for his early retirement fund and an ostentatious Thanksgiving celebration. Needing advice, I called my friend Rachel, who worked as a lawyer specializing in financial disputes. "Do I have any legal recourse to get my money back?" I asked after explaining the situation. Rachel's answer was measured. "It depends on how the money was presented. Was it explicitly stated as a loan with terms for repayment?" "No," I admitted. "It was presented as help for an emergency." "And was there any written agreement about how the money would be used?" I had to concede there wasn't. Like many family financial arrangements, it had been based on verbal understanding and trust. Then legally, it would be difficult to reclaim. Rachel explained. "In the eyes of the law, it could be considered a gift, unless you can prove there was a mutual understanding about repayment or specific use." While the legal path seemed challenging, I wasn't ready to give up. I spent the next few days deep diving into my family's social media and email accounts, building a comprehensive picture of their deception. During this investigation, I discovered something significant. Every December, my parents hosted a large Christmas party that doubled as a showcase of their yearly achievements. This tradition had started when I was in college and had grown more elaborate each year. This year's event was especially important because my father planned to announce his early retirement, a milestone he had been working toward for years. The emails revealed he had invited his former colleagues, golf buddies, and even his old boss people. He had always been desperate to impress. The Christmas party was his moment of triumph, his opportunity to show off his successful life and financial acumen. And I realized with the start that my contribution had made this possible, accelerating his timeline by at least 2 years. This was it, the one thing they would regret losing. If they wanted to exclude me from Thanksgiving, fine. But they would face the consequences of their deception. I drafted a detailed email to my entire family, including extended relatives who were usually kept in the dark about our dynamics. The message was clear, factual, and devastating in its simplicity. I explained that I had discovered the truth about the insurance coverage and my father's misrepresentation of their financial need. I attached screenshots of relevant emails and financial transactions as evidence. Finally, I announced that I would no longer be contributing to any family expenses, including the significant annual contribution I made toward their property taxes and the Christmas party I had partially funded for years. "The one thing they'd regret," I wrote, "is taking my generosity for granted." Before hitting send, I took a deep breath. This would change everything, but perhaps that was exactly what needed to happen. The response to my email was immediate and explosive, exactly as I had anticipated. My phone began ringing within minutes of sending it, my father's name flashing on the screen repeatedly. I let it go to voicemail, not yet ready for the confrontation. Instead, I listened to the messages as they accumulated. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" my father's voice demanded in the first message, the controlled anger barely contained. "You had no right to go through private emails. This is a complete invasion of privacy." The second message took a different approach. "This is a serious misunderstanding, Talia. The money situation is complicated. You're only seeing part of the picture. Call me immediately so we can discuss this like adults." By the third voicemail, the tone had shifted to threats. "If you don't retract that email and apologize immediately, you can consider yourself cut off from this family permanently. I won't tolerate this kind of disrespect." My mother's messages followed a predictable pattern of emotional manipulation. "Oh, sweetheart," her voice quavered. "I can't believe you would do this to us. Your father hasn't slept all night. He's so upset he's making himself sick. Please call us. We can work this out." The next one pushed harder on my guilt buttons. "I don't understand why you're doing this to us after all we've done for you. We sacrificed everything to raise you. Is this how you repay us?" My brother Jackson opted for text messages rather than calls. "WTF is wrong with you," he wrote. "Dad's having chest pains because of your email. If anything happens to him, it's on you." 20 minutes later. "You've always been jealous that I have a better relationship with mom and dad. This is just your way of trying to ruin everything for everyone. And finally, nobody wants you at Thanksgiving anyway. You always make everything about you and your success. It's pathetic." Amanda took her response to social media, posting vague but pointed statements about families being torn apart by greed and jealousy. She directly messaged me as well. "I always knew you were selfish, but this is a new low. They're your parents. You owe them everything." I sat on my couch watching the notifications roll in, feeling strangely calm. The intensity of their reactions only confirmed what I had suspected all along. They were panicking because I had exposed the truth. It wasn't until evening that I finally answered a call, speaking first to my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, who had been included in my email. "Talia, is all of this true?" she asked, her voice concerned rather than accusatory. "About the insurance money and everything else?" "Yes, every word," I confirmed. "I have the documentation to prove it." She was quiet for a moment. "I've always wondered about certain things," she admitted. "Your parents' lifestyle never quite matched what I knew of their income. And the way they talk about you, it's always about what you're doing for them, never about your accomplishments or happiness." Her validation was like a cool drink after a long thirst. For years, I had questioned my own perceptions, wondering if I was being overly sensitive or selfish in my feelings about my family's treatment. Having an outside perspective that aligned with mine was powerfully affirming. Other extended family members reached out as well. Some were supportive, expressing shock at my parents' behavior. Others sided with them, suggesting I was mentally unstable or going through some kind of breakdown. After all, what kind of daughter would publicly expose her parents like this? The division in the family became clear quickly. Those who had observed my parents' manipulative behavior over the years believed me immediately. Those who had only seen the carefully curated public image they projected found my claims hard to accept. 3 days after my email, my father initiated a family video call inviting all the key players. I agreed to participate, ready to stand my ground. As soon as the call connected, I could see my parents sitting stiffly on their living room couch. My father looked haggard but defiant, my mother tearful beside him. Jackson and Amanda joined from their respective homes, both wearing expressions of righteous indignation. "Talia," my father began without preamble, "this has gone far enough. You've made serious accusations based on information you obtained by invading our privacy. It's time to end this nonsense and apologize." I looked at him steadily. "I'm not apologizing for discovering the truth. You lied about needing $9,000 for roof repairs when insurance covered most of it. You used my money for your retirement fund and to plan an extravagant Thanksgiving that I'm not welcome to attend." My father's face reddened. "The insurance situation changed after you sent the money. We couldn't have known they would increase their coverage. Then why didn't you tell me I asked? Why didn't you return the excess funds? And why does your financial advisor reference my exact contribution amount as accelerating your retirement timeline? He faltered, clearly not expecting me to have such specific information. Your mother and I have supported you your entire life. If we needed to use some of that money differently, it's our right. Supported me. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college because you refused to help. I've given you over $40,000 in the past decade, while you criticized my life choices and excluded me from family decisions. My mother intervened, tears flowing freely now. We never meant to hurt you, Talia. We love you. We're just trying to do what's best for the whole family. And that includes uninviting me from Thanksgiving while using my money to fund it, I asked pointedly. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. That was a misunderstanding. Jackson jumped in, his voice aggressive. You're blowing everything out of proportion as usual. So Dad borrowed some money, so what, you can afford it. Stop being so petty. It's not about the money, Jackson, I responded. It's about the pattern of manipulation and disrespect. It's about taking advantage of my generosity while treating me like an outsider. Amanda's perfectly made-up face filled my screen as she leaned forward. You've always been so dramatic, Talia. Always acting like you're better than us because you make more money. Did it ever occur to you that maybe you're not invited to Thanksgiving because you're insufferable to be around? Her words stung, but I refused to be baited into an emotional response. Instead, I addressed the entire group calmly. I'm not here to argue or convince you that I've been mistreated. The facts speak for themselves. I'm simply informing you that the financial support I've provided over the years is ending effective immediately. That includes the annual contribution to the Christmas party. My father's expression changed instantly, alarm replacing anger. You can't do that, he said quickly. The invitations have already gone out. People are expecting the same event we have every year. I have every right to decide how my money is spent, I replied, echoing his earlier words. Consider this me doing what's best for me. The call devolved from there, with accusations flying from all sides. I was called selfish, ungrateful, vindictive, and mentally unstable. My parents threatened to cut me off completely, apparently forgetting that they were financially dependent on me, not the other way around. When the call finally ended, I felt completely drained, but also strangely liberated. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my family's manipulative tactics without backing down. The road ahead would be difficult and painful, but it was necessary. I didn't know then that this confrontation would be the first step in a long journey toward healthier relationships, both with my family and with myself. Thanksgiving Day arrived with a strange mixture of emotions I had never experienced before. For the first time in my adult life, I wouldn't be rushing to catch an early morning flight, anxiously reviewing conversation topics that would be safe to discuss with my father, or steeling myself against inevitable criticism of my appearance, career, or relationship status. Instead, I woke up in my own apartment, made myself a cup of coffee, and stood by the window watching Boston slowly come to life on the holiday morning. The emptiness I had expected to feel was surprisingly absent, replaced by a tentative sense of peace. My phone had been notably quiet in the days leading up to Thanksgiving, after our explosive family video call communication had dwindled to sporadic, tense text messages. My father had made one final attempt to pressure me into restoring financial support for the Christmas party, which I had firmly declined. After that silence, I wasn't going to spend the day alone, though. My roommate Jenna had invited me to join her family's Thanksgiving celebration in Cambridge. Additionally, several friends from work had organized an orphan Thanksgiving for those of us unable or unwilling to travel home for the holiday. I'm creating new traditions today, I told myself as I got dressed. Traditions based on genuine connection, rather than obligation. Jenna's family welcomed me with warmth that felt almost foreign. Her mother hugged me tightly upon arrival. Her father poured me a glass of wine and engaged me in a conversation about my work that displayed genuine interest. And her brothers included me in their spirited debate about basketball without a hint of condescension. No one criticized my clothes or asked pointed questions about my love life. No one made me feel like an intruder. In the afternoon, I received a barrage of angry texts from my family. Pictures of their scaled-down Thanksgiving meal noticeably less elaborate than what they had planned, accompanied by passive-aggressive captions. "Hope you're happy with yourself," Jackson wrote alongside an image of a store-bought pumpkin pie. "Mom cried all morning because you ruined her plans." My mother sent a more direct guilt trip. "Thanksgiving isn't the same without all my children here. I don't understand why you're punishing us like this." Even my father broke his silence. "Your actions have consequences. Several people have asked about you today. I told them you're going through a difficult phase. When you're ready to apologize and behave like a daughter should, we'll welcome you back." In previous years, these messages would have devastated me, sending me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. But something had shifted inside me. I read them acknowledge the emotional manipulation attempt and put my phone away without responding. Later that evening, at the friends' Thanksgiving gathering, I found myself surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. We shared stories, played games, and enjoyed a potluck meal where nobody kept score of who contributed what. The contrast with my family dynamics couldn't have been more stark. As we were clearing dishes, my phone rang with an unexpected caller. My father's best friend, Martin. I stepped into a quiet room to answer. Talia Martin's gruff voice came through. "I wanted to check on you. Your dad told everyone you're having some kind of breakdown." "I'm perfectly fine, Martin," I replied calmly. "What else did my father say?" Martin hesitated. "He said you've become irrational about money and are making wild accusations. But I've known you since you were knee-high, and that doesn't sound like you at all." I appreciated his skepticism and found myself explaining the situation in simple, factual terms. I told him about the roof repair deception, the Thanksgiving uninvitation, and the years of financial manipulation. To my surprise, Martin sighed heavily. "I was afraid of something like this. Your father's been bragging about retiring early for months, saying some unexpected funds had come through. I wondered where that money had come from. His validation felt like another weight lifting from my shoulders. I wasn't crazy or irrational. Others could see the truth too once they knew where to look." Around midnight, as I was preparing to leave the gathering, I received a call from an unexpected source, my brother Jackson. I almost didn't answer, assuming it would be more accusations or guilt trips, but something made me accept the call. "Hey." His voice came through quieter than usual with none of the aggressive edge I had come to expect. "Hey," I responded cautiously. "What's up?" There was a long pause before he spoke again. "Things didn't go well today. Dad's been in a mood all day, snapping at everyone. Mom kept crying. Amanda and Tom left early after Dad criticized their contribution to the meal." I waited, not sure where this was heading. "I've been thinking about what you said," Jackson continued, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "About the pattern of manipulation. I always thought you were the favorite, the successful one they bragged about." This revelation stunned me. Me, the favorite. "How could he possibly think that they always talked about your accomplishments to their friends?" He explained. "Talia, the software engineer, Talia in Boston, Talia with her fancy degree. I felt like I could never measure up. But they criticized me constantly," I countered. "Nothing I did was ever good enough. To your face, maybe," Jackson acknowledged. "But to everyone else, you were the golden child. They just expected you to keep helping financially while they took credit for your success." We talked for nearly an hour, comparing our experiences growing up in the same house, but living very different realities. For the first time, I saw how our parents had played us against each other, ensuring we never united or compared notes about our treatment. Before we hung up, Jackson said something that gave me hope for our relationship. "I'm sorry, Tal. I should have seen what was happening. I don't blame you for standing up for yourself." Not everyone was having this realization, though. Amanda doubled down on her hostility, posting a series of thinly veiled attacks on social media about ungrateful family members and attention-seeking behavior. My mother continued her tearful voicemails, each one designed to twist the knife of guilt a little deeper. My father's approach changed over the following days. After his initial anger failed to bring me back in line, he switched to negotiation. He called with a proposition: if I would resume my financial support, particularly for the Christmas party, he would reconsider my inclusion in family events. The old me would have jumped at this olive branch, however conditional it was, but I recognized it for what it was, another attempt at control and manipulation. No, Dad, I told him firmly. I'm not buying my way back into this family. Either you value me as your daughter or you don't. My wallet is no longer part of the equation. His response was telling. Fine, he snapped. But don't come crying to us when you realize how lonely life is without family. What he failed to understand was that I had already been lonely within the family. The difference now was that I was choosing to surround myself with people who genuinely cared about me, rather than those who saw me as a resource to be exploited. As November turned to December, news trickled in through mutual connections. My father had been forced to scale back his retirement plans significantly. The Christmas party had been downsized from the usual catered affair to a potluck. Most notably, the grand announcement of his early retirement had been postponed indefinitely. These consequences weren't my goal, but they were the natural result of removing the financial support that had enabled their lifestyle. For the first time, my family was facing the reality of living within their actual means. It was a difficult but necessary reckoning, not just for them, but for me as well. 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, spring had arrived in Boston, bringing with it a sense of renewal that matched my internal transformation. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been essential for my well-being and self-respect. The most profound change was in my relationship with money and self-worth. For years, I had equated financial assistance with love, believing that if I gave enough, I would eventually earn my family's approval. Working with my therapist, Dr. Lisa, I had begun to untangle these unhealthy associations. Money is a resource, not a measure of your value as a person. She reminded me during one particularly breakthrough session, you are worthy of love and respect, regardless of what you provide financially. This simple truth had taken months to truly internalize, but once it did, it changed everything about how I approached relationships, both with my family and with others in my life. The process of rebuilding connections with my family had begun, though it looked very different from what I might have imagined. After the initial explosion and period of minimal contact, individual conversations started happening, each unique in its tone and outcome. My father was the most resistant to change. Our first one-on-one conversation after the holidays was tense and filled with unspoken resentments. He had called to discuss a tax issue, clearly hoping to ease back into our previous pattern, without addressing the underlying problems. Dad, I said firmly after listening to his question about deductions, I'm happy to talk about taxes, but we need to address what happened first. His sigh was audible through the phone. What's done is done, Talia. I think we should move forward. Moving forward requires acknowledgement and change, I replied. I'm not returning to the way things were. After several difficult conversations, he finally made a reluctant admission. Maybe I did take advantage of your generosity, he conceded. You've always been so capable, so responsible. It was easy to rely on you. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was more self-awareness than he had ever displayed before. The financial necessity created by my withdrawal of support had forced him to confront realities he had long avoided, including his own tendency toward controlling behavior and financial manipulation. My mother's journey was different, but equally challenging. Without my father in the room, she spoke more openly about her enabling role in the family dynamics. I should have stood up to your father, she admitted during a tearful phone call. I should have protected you kids more. Why didn't you? I asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. Her answer revealed depths of insecurity I hadn't fully appreciated. I was afraid, she confessed. Afraid of being alone, afraid of conflict. It was easier to go along with everything to be the peacemaker. With gentle encouragement, my mother had begun attending therapy herself, working to find her voice after decades of silence. Our conversations became more authentic, though still challenging at times when she slipped back into patterns of guilt inducement or passive-aggressive comments. Jackson's transformation was perhaps the most surprising. After our Thanksgiving night phone call, he had initiated several more conversations, each diving deeper into our shared history and different perspectives. He had been doing his own reflection, coming to terms with how he had been both beneficiary and victim of our parents' manipulative tactics. I always thought you had it easy, he told me during one particularly honest discussion. I was jealous of your success, your independence. I didn't see the price you were paying. His own financial habits had begun to change. He got serious about budgeting, found a stable job rather than chasing get-rich-quick schemes, and even started repaying small amounts of the money he had borrowed from me over the years. I told him repayment wasn't necessary, but he insisted. It's not about the money, he said, echoing my own words from months earlier. It's about respect and responsibility. Amanda remained the most distant, her pride preventing her from acknowledging any wrongdoing or manipulation. However, even she had begun to show small signs of understanding. She had stopped her public social media attacks and occasionally reached out with neutral text messages about shared childhood memories or family news. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. As the next Thanksgiving approached, I received an unexpected call from my father. "We're planning Thanksgiving dinner," he said without preamble. "Your mother would like you to be there." I noticed his careful phrasing, the absence of his own desire for my presence. Still, it was an invitation, not a demand or manipulation. "I'd need to think about it," I replied honestly. Things would need to be different. Different how he asked, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. I took a deep breath and outlined my conditions clearly. No criticism of my life choices, my appearance, or my relationship status. No financial discussions unless I initiate them. And most importantly, acknowledgement from everyone that past behavior was hurtful and needs to change. He was quiet for a long moment. "Those are significant demands," he finally said. "They're not demands, Dad. They're boundaries. Healthy relationships have them." After some negotiation, we reached an agreement. I would come for Thanksgiving dinner, staying at a nearby hotel rather than in my childhood bedroom, and everyone would make an effort to respect the boundaries I had established. The visit wasn't perfect. There were tense moments, old patterns that threatened to reassert themselves, and a few snide comments that I chose to address directly rather than ignore. But there were also moments of genuine connection, conversations that went beyond surface pleasantries, and even laughter that felt unforced. Most importantly, there was no financial transaction involved. I came as a daughter, a sister, a family member, not as a benefactor or human ATM. I brought a bottle of wine and a homemade dessert, appropriate gifts for a holiday gathering, not a check or cash transfer. On the financial front, I had made significant changes as well. I had established clear policies for myself about family financial assistance. Any future help would require transparent terms, written agreements, and respect for my boundaries. I had set up a separate account with limited funds designated for family emergencies, ensuring that any assistance wouldn't impact my own financial goals. I had also expanded my chosen family, deepening friendships with people who valued me completely, apart from what I could provide materially. Jenna and I had renewed our lease for another year, creating a home environment that felt safe and supportive. My friend circle had evolved to include people who understood healthy boundaries and respected them. The most profound change, though, was internal. The guilt that had driven me for so long had diminished significantly. I had come to understand that saying no wasn't selfish, that protecting myself wasn't wrong, and that genuine love didn't come with financial strings attached. As I look back on that challenging Thanksgiving when my father banned me from the family gathering after I had paid $9,000 for their roof, I can see it now as a painful but necessary catalyst for change. By canceling the one thing they would regret, my financial support, I forced a reckoning that might never have happened otherwise. The journey toward healthier relationships continues. There are still difficult days, moments of doubt, and occasional backsliding into old patterns. But the foundation has shifted, and with it, the possibility for authentic connection has emerged. I've learned that true family, whether biological or chosen, is built on mutual respect, genuine care, and unconditional acceptance. It doesn't keep a ledger of debts and payments, and it doesn't use love as a bargaining chip. Most importantly, it allows each person to be valued for who they are, not what they can provide. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, your worth isn't measured by what you give, but by who you are.